Board now. Wonderful. Okay. Great. People are coming on in. That's what we love to see. And I think we are about ready to get things kicked off. Welcome, everybody. What day is it? We've had a busy week at Great
It has
Data
been a
Minds.
busy week.
We had our partner appreciation lunch. We had our holiday get together yesterday. I'm like, today is Thursday. Welcome to Thursday. And thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kaylia Garrido. I head up marketing and events here at Great Data Minds. If you don't know us yet, then you sure will soon, because Great Data Minds is a collective of passionate data activists, and we are on a mission to modernize the world of data. We offer a full range of services from strategic planning to education and deployment of critical data projects. We also produce a whole bunch of great data related content. So please check us out at greatdataminds.com to see what we are up to next. Before we get started with today's wonderful discussion, just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar, so everybody's cameras and microphones are all off, but we welcome and encourage you to use the chat and or the Q&A. We actually prefer chat because we've seen in the past, and Mike's already got it kicked off, I see. We've seen in the past that different attendees can answer each other's questions as we're going through our session, but you can also use the Q&A if you'd like. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to our esteemed panelists today. We have Patty Clower with us. Patty is the principal consultant at Global Data Strategy, and she sits on the leadership team at Future Capital. She's a longtime data guru and friend of Great Data Minds and all of us here, who uses her technical expertise to identify solutions to large-scale societal issues. And she is particularly passionate about exploring the power of our personal and collective attention and how through our attention, we create the systems that form the fabric of our society. This is big work, Patty.
It's big work.
This is big. Wow. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so excited to hear your insights on the attention economy. And then the usual suspect that I always have, my partner in crime, Mr. Mike Lampa. He's our very Chief Analytics Officer here at Great Data Minds. And we know Mike has built an amazing career working with enterprises to transform their analytics programs, both modernizing antiquated programs and building up best-in-class programs from the ground up. He brings decades of experience, and he is, I don't know how to say that. I want to highlight the experience, but then you know, he's got all the experience, guys. That's what we're up to here. And as an executive analytics practitioner, experience on both sides of the desk as a consultant and as well as an employee in Global 100 enterprises. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kaylia.
Yeah,
hey,
Mike,
Patty.
Thank you, Kaylia. Thank you, Mike. It's so good to be with you guys.
Yeah,
It's like old home week, right?
I know. The last time we were together, we're sitting in a waiting room in some hospital waiting for our meeting.
I know. That's right. That's right. I was going to say we were having a bottle of wine sitting on Julie's couch or something.
Or we had that too. It's so good to see you again, Patty, and visit with you a little bit. So thank you for joining us today. So what is this attention economy? What is this thing, Patty?
Well, you know, it's so ubiquitous. We're all engaged in it all the time. And it's like we're part of it and we don't even realize that we are, you know. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy that you invited me on to talk about it a little bit. So when people refer to the attention economy, basically we're referring to the monetization of our attention when we're online. So for example, when you're on Google searching or on Facebook or Instagram, you know, even LinkedIn, you know, all of these social media applications and search engines, basically they're collecting a vast amount of information about us. They monetize this information and they develop even more sophisticated algorithms and persuasion techniques to keep us clicking and scrolling and searching and sharing. And then, you know, that is the engine for basically selling us stuff, and even, just keeping us, keeping our attention there, in there, and with
Yeah.
them, right?
Like hitting our endorphins or something, right?
Well, there's so much work that's been done. There's courses at Stanford on persuasion techniques, and there's something called the Big Five traits that they study, and it's like people have hundreds of data elements that represent. I can talk about data with you guys. That's so cool. Most of the time I have to, make this very high level. There's just tons of data that's being collected, and it's not just the personal, demographics that we're used to. It's our behavioral data. So that's my biggest concern, is our behavioral data is being collected, and then we're being fed, and the intention is to influence our behavior. And without our knowing it,
So as I'm poking around in Facebook or whatever, I'm drawing attention, or is it that I'm trying to draw attention, or is it both ways?
Well, you're using Facebook for your purposes, right?
Yeah.
And part of what you're doing is you're liking certain things and not other things. You're posting certain photos and not other photos, or you're not posting photos at all, and that means something, right? So everything you do, how much time you spend, and everything you do is all, collected. We know this from web analysis, right? Weblog analysis. We started doing weblog analysis back in the 2000s, right? For online marketing and stuff like that. But it's really accelerated into a very sophisticated, whole process now.
Yeah, and the ecosystem, and you mentioned monetizing before too. So the attention that I'm creating about myself is being monetized.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. So are there like different aspects of the attention economy that we should visit?
Yeah, there's so many, but I would say the two giant primary things to think about are social media, which we know, Facebook, Instagram, all that, and then online commerce, right? And so when you go online to search for something you might be interested in, or if you're just going online searching, you have sort of ads or things being popped up to you, unless you have a browser like I use Brave, and I kind of block a lot of that stuff. But, so again, there are tools that can prevent some of this stuff when you start to become aware of it. But when you're in Facebook, you have ads being served up to you, right? That seem to be tailored to just, what you want. A friend of mine was complaining about this the other day. She said she was talking to her son about making him banana waffles for his birthday. And she says within an hour she was on her tablet, and there were these recipes for banana waffles showing up in her, in her world, as she was searching, or Facebook or whatever, which is crazy, because she says, I never researched a banana waffle. I've been making banana waffles my whole life for my kid. It's not I'm not looking for recipes or ingredients. I know how to do that, but there they were, it's so it feels like there's this stealth, kind of stalking nature that's happening, because they're capturing information about us and then stalking us online. And so that's one of the big things that why I'm talking about it, is I want to flip that whole model so that advertising can be a force for good, instead of, this sense that we're being stalked.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was incubated to be a force for good at some point, right? In the early incarnation, and you mentioned the waffles. I was having a discussion with my son the other day, and of course I got Alexa and some of this other stuff around my house, or Sonos, and on my phone, within about a half an hour, I got an ad for what we were talking about.
Yeah.
while I was playing solitaire, which I love to do. That's my pastime.
Yeah.
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 And I found that to be kind of quite alarming.
Yeah.
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 So
Well, imagine the scenario, walking down the street in a city, wherever you are, and your phone is pinging you that somebody in one of your private Facebook groups is in a Starbucks around the corner, right? Or that something that you searched online 3 days ago is on sale at, a store just up the street, right? Or, I mean, just there's this capacity already exists.
Yeah.
And this is the idea of like this coming into your attention. Well, some people, I'll describe that scenario to them, and some people say, wow, that is so cool. I would love that. Right. And then other people go, oh my God, they're horrified.
Right.
They're absolutely horrified. Right. And then there's some people in between saying, oh, kind of nice to know that it's 20% off this thing I've been looking for, and I can just walk in and get it, and it's right there, and that's convenient. So really, I'm really seeing that there is a movement and a future for us, if we navigate through having awareness of it, to kind of shift this and to give and to create a more of a person-centered paradigm, rather than businesses, kind of extracting our attention as a raw resource for their manipulation to just push more product at us, which is kind of if you think about our current economic model for the global economy, we're extracting raw resources out of the earth, and using them, and we're kind of destroying our planet, in the process. So when we think about our attention being the thing being extracted, that's a little bit alarming. A lot of people just don't realize that they go on and they thought that they were going online for one thing, and then 2 hours later, and I'm sure we've all had that experience. I've had that experience,
Right.
And I'm even aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So those are the minutes and days and hours of our life. We only have so much attention, and there's tons of information. So people used to talk about, and I know you remember this, the big movement was the information economy, and that's, being data people, we had, our guaranteed jobs forever, right? Because it's managing information. But it's really, really information. It's ubiquitous. There's tons of information, and actually even more disinformation. It's really more about our attention, because that's a scarce resource. We only have so much attention, and that's what's all being asked, competed for, is our attention.
Excellent. Interesting. So, you mentioned stock, and it's got to be a scary time for parents, right? I know when my boys were young, I tried to keep them away from gaming. We didn't have the mobile phones now like we do now, but I'm watching young children, 1 and 2 year olds, really navigating phones pretty well, right? And this exploitation of my attention, this could be a kind of a scary thing for me as a grandparent now, or as a parent. So all this ecosystem built up, and there's no policies in place, Patty. What's going on?
It's all self-regulated by the companies, and companies are driven by growth, just like the rest of our economy, right? So that's one of the issues. I just started a working group that's working in cooperation with the United Nations to come up, and there's 4 pillars that we're focusing on. The first one is the business model itself. What if we switched out the word growth in a business model for reciprocity, meaning it's not about Facebook just getting more users and keeping users online more, but actually reciprocity. So all stakeholders involved get benefit out of the experience, and that can be being applied to everything that we do in terms of business. Just switch out those 2 words, and then and that principle, kind of going through everything. So that's one thing, is the business model. Number 2 is the technology infrastructure. So technology has a point of view, and we don't even realize it because we're just engaged with the technology, but the technology actually defines how we are, what our perspectives are, and how we're engaging. And now with AI algorithms and things like that, it's even more ubiquitous. So we're exploring that. And then the third one is policies, as you were mentioning. And Facebook has their own board to self-regulate themselves. There's no policies. So the first thing we're actually doing as part of our working group is looking at digital human rights, online human rights. Like what would be a baseline framework to popularize across businesses and governments to just start to adhere to in terms of online human rights. And then, I think that there's a lot of heuristics that we know just in our own field that we apply, in terms of principles of governance and things like that. And all that needs to be looked at in a healthy way. So we're starting to engage the UN. We're bringing people of all different types of stakeholders from business, advertising world, technology, activists, programmers, a lot of people together to have that conversation.
That's awesome. Does this working group have a name yet? Have you kind of
It's
labeled it?
the Future Capital Conscious Attention Economy Working Group.
Oh my. There's an acronym for it. Conscious. Right. So
you were mentioning about your kids, and let me just throw out a few statistics just to kind of give you some idea about this. There are 7.9 billion people in the world.
Okay.
And 4.39 billion internet users. So first of all, half the world still doesn't have access to the internet. That just indicates a level of, I'm living in Mexico, and pretty much almost everyone has a phone, except for the very poorest. So imagine. So out of the 4.39 billion users, 4 billion of them are Google users. So they've got almost a 90% penetration. And so, and then 2.89 billion people use Facebook.
It's a big country.
Yeah.
All right.
2.8, they're bigger than any country. They're bigger than any religion. They're really, it's huge. So that's why, so I use Facebook, and I really like my feed, and I like communicating with my friends and, doing that stuff. But, if even 1% of the people using Facebook are harmed, are being stalked, or are being, that's a lot of people.
That still is a lot of people.
Right?
Yeah.
When you have a 2.89 billion people on Facebook. So that's important to kind of give perspective. And then the other statistic I'm going to give you is 68% of all US adults are using social media. And 75% of all of them use it daily.
Yeah.
So it's really quite ubiquitous. And, the thing about the kids, I was doing some research about this, and people don't like to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the biggest scary thing for parents and about the kids and stuff like that in it. And that is, the online pornography market. It's valued at 35 billion worldwide. And the following percentages are children reported to be exposed to pornography. And that's 51% of 11 to 13-year-olds, 66% of 14 to 15-year-olds, and 79% of 16 to 17-year-olds. And the top, the most trafficked websites worldwide, the top 11 are porn sites.
Oh, God. Yep.
So, it's, the social media companies want to do self-governance. They, through privacy policies to prevent, direct censoring of material. that's deemed to be unfit or dangerous. But and most social platforms use the freedom of speech as an argument for allowing this online content. And but I think that one of the things that we don't realize is they're looking at like cyberbullying as a technical issue rather than a human rights issue, right? It's a human rights issue. You wouldn't tolerate that in front of you if it was happening in front of you, wouldn't tolerate somebody bullying a kid, right in front of you, would you?
No, right.
So you wouldn't, I mean, especially, pornography, but I mean, really, it's interesting because that's why we want to kind of tackle what does it mean, in terms of to have some rights and respect and having people at the center of a conversation, at the center of any focus of a business, of whatever. And even the word consumer is kind of disgusting, right? It's like they're extracting, you're a consumer, you're someone that we want to consume, what we have. So, I think that advertising could be a force for good if it's just flipped a little bit. And that's what we're trying to look at. Right. If we look at how can we benefit your life? How can we make your life better? How can this support you? How can this contribute to your well-being? How can we be more, have a more thriving, healthy, life,
Right.
And if that's the attitude and that's the approach, then.
Yeah, because we're sitting on an amazing platform. If we can switch around the model, I like that approach that you're talking about, get away from a growth model and have it be more, human centered or individual rights centered.
Well, and technology can affect that, because think about it, blockchain, in the future, like there's Web 3.0 and decentralized applications and all that coming up. And if we're in the future, we can put our identity on the blockchain. So we control our identity and the information that we're sharing on the blockchain. And then any vendor, business, company, whatever, can subscribe to us, right? And we have control over that. That flips the whole paradigm into a person-centric model, right? And so imagine, wouldn't that be great if you're moving right now, Mike? All the work you have to do to change your address, with all the banks and credit cards and all that stuff, it's such a pain in the ass. Everyone has that pain in the ass.
Yep.
So imagine if all you did it was once in your blockchain and your personal identity, and then everyone subscribes to you, and that's it.
So is that part of the basis of the working group? What you guys are exploring? Possibly.
It's some of the stuff I've been researching. There's a lot of different people looking at different aspects of this, and we're gathering the thought leaders in these different spaces. So I'm just kind of sharing some of the stuff that has been bubbling up that I think is really kind of exciting, especially because this is a data world. Your audience are my people.
And all those algorithms that you've been talking about, I mean, there are just a wealth of machine learning based algorithms, or artificial intelligence, if you prefer to use that phrase. But every one of those algorithms has an intentional bias built into it.
That's right.
It was built with an intent, and with that intent comes a bias. So I'm starting to pick up, Patty. You're not telling me to run away, get away from Facebook or anything like that. It's like we've got a capitalist-based society for the most part, which is built on growth, and as long as that's going to happen, we're just going to have to be aware and deal with this. Let's call it an opportunity as opposed to a problem, right?
Well, that's what I see it as. I mean, I really see, because what we've seen demonstrated is the power of it. It's huge power and reach. But what if the intention was just shifted a little bit to empower people, not to extract their attention, but to, enhance their attention, enhance
Mhm.
their life through their attention online, right?
Mhm.
What if
Right.
their moments were enhancing them? So, we've seen that unbridled growth, it's already, our world economy is broken already,
Mhm.
even though
Mhm.
it might not look like it in this second, but it's broken.
Mhm.
Unbridled growth is unsustainable, and we are chewing up all our resources. It's unsustainable. So we
Mhm.
know that's happening. Unbridled growth in the attention economy world is basically going after the moments and days and hours of our own lives, of our own attention,
Yeah.
of our own experience.
Okay, so that there's the social media aspect of the attention economy, and it feels like you just bridged into a little bit of the business perspective too.
Yeah.
So how do we change the model to get to some kind of a win-win-win-win-win?
Well, first of all, just being aware, right?
Uh-huh.
When you're online and you're online with something that has a recommendation engine, right? Be
Mhm.
aware of what's being recommended,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What's being recommended to you. When you, there are, like you were just saying, suddenly you were being recommended an advertising for something that you were just having a conversation with someone about. That's kind
Yeah,
of, you know,
that kind of spooked me
yeah,
because something listened to me.
yeah. And
You
so,
know?
and so, so if we have a lot of power in how we choose to use our attention.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's the fourth pillar of the working group, is attention literacy or attention education. And that's the
Oh
one that's
man.
near and dear to my heart, because we have the power to choose. The power is in our hands, because we can choose how we're paying attention, right?
Mhm.
We pay attention. That's even in the idioms of the language that we use, is the recognition of the value of our attention.
Huh.
And so when we go online, and we are, there are certain brands. I'm working with a guy, and personally on our working group, who happens to work for a large advertising company, who wants to shift their whole model to be called sustainable advertising, where they are working with their clients, the big brands, and influencing them to do advertising campaigns that build trust through actually adding value into their lives through their products, rather than trying to stalk them to manipulate them into buying their products, right? And so becoming aware of the companies that really are trying to do a good job with
Mhm.
what they're doing, and supporting them,
Yep.
supporting them with your pocketbook. That's one way.
Mhm.
Becoming aware when you're online, how much time you're spending, and are you spending more time than you want? I always tell, I have students I'm teaching around some of this stuff, and I always tell them, before you go online, actually think about what do I want? Why am I here? What am I doing? And really
Mhm.
write it down, because it's easy to get lost. And write it
Yep.
down, have a clear intention about what you want to do, because otherwise, an hour later, you've just been sort of cruising around. And not that that's a bad thing. I love to do that. I've had a lot of, I call them, the internet oracle, serendipities. Something shows up that I didn't know, that kind of showed up online. So
Uh-huh.
I'm not dissing anything. I'm just want to kind of expose what's happening, what the system is, bring awareness to it, so we can have more agency, more sovereignty over our own attention and how we choose to engage online.
Right. Yeah. So
And
being
then
a uh-huh.
awareness, as programmers, obviously awareness,
Mhm.
I mean, Sophie Zhang was a Facebook programmer, who was a whistleblower.
Uh-huh.
And because she was watching how, what how certain algorithms were being misused,
Mhm.
how through Facebook, and bring that awareness forward wasn't getting the attention that it really needed. So
Mhm.
when misuse happens, or if you're asked to program something in a certain way, just like you wouldn't allow, somebody to abuse someone in front of you on the street, why would you, program something that you could tell would be not, a positive thing for the people using that algorithm, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have very good models yet that to apply to those, and that's what one organization we're working with is trying to come up with actual heuristics and models to help us, judge things like that, so that we can be better at that.
Kind of the model.
Mhm.
Running algorithms on the algorithms, and I am aware that there is different pockets of bills being put forward or that are being authored around accountability for our algorithms. So I think it's the Algorithm Accountability Act that's being proposed.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, though, we're data people, right? So they might be talking about the algorithms, but what about the data they're collecting from the algorithms, right? Those are already stored. Are they asking them to be accountable for that? Right?
You're supposed to be ethical with the data you use, but put a definition around that. Yeah.
It's interesting if you look at the frameworks and models in the United States, it's the private industry or private business really has control, right, of all of that. In Europe, it's people, right? It's people have control. It's more of a different framework that they're focusing on, and then like in China, it's an authoritarian government that has control, right?
Yeah.
So these are three very, very different approaches, in terms of privacy, data, and data ownership and things like that.
So I need to be more aware of myself and my interaction, right? Is there any kind of intentionality awareness that I need to have too? Like, be more intentional with the kind of attention I'm drawing or producing?
Yeah. Well, that could be a whole nother conversation or a webinar on that, which I would love to do sometime. What I teach a few simple mindfulness exercises that bring our awareness back into the body and focus, right, in different ways. So I teach something called the slider of attention. So you can bring your attention in your body through maybe doing deep breaths, et cetera, just to kind of land yourself out of your brain and the thinking into your body and just experiencing yourself, and then doing a very laser focus, open-eyed focus, out in the distance, pick a point and just focus really hard on that and keep your attention there. And when it wanders off, bring it right back. That develops that muscle of focus. And then when you feel what that feels like, and then when you feel what it feels like to have your attention just relaxed in your body, and then there's a whole world in between, which I call the slider of awareness, where you can just slide it in and back and forth to where you need it to be. Because most of the time we're not aware, we just kind of go out of ourselves and we're walking around in our heads and our thoughts, and we're not really aware of our body. But if you start with your body and then just release a little bit of attention for whatever you need, and start kind of experimenting with how much attention do I need to release from my body, from my presence, for this exercise? Oh, maybe only this much. Or how much do I need to release for that exercise? And just kind of look at it like a slider. Like if you are a listener of this webinar right now, you can have most of your attention aware in your body, and you can be relaxed, and you can feel your body, and you can be really present and listening. And then maybe you have released a little bit of attention to hear our voices and to follow the conversation, and then to think about how this relates to things in your life, right? But that's a little bit more, that's less awareness that needs to be released than, let's say, the three of us, because we're presenting, right? So we have to focus more and make sure that we're articulate and that we're explaining things, and that, so I have to have more attention released out for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you go online, right? So you go online, if you start inside your body and how you're feeling, then you go online and then you start to interact with stuff. If you have an intention, you just release enough attention to start interacting. And then if you notice you're getting triggered or grabbed by somebody's comment or something that you read over there, and then pretty soon you're just kind of like gone, room, right? Right. So it's just, that's a little tool. That's a little awareness tool, attention tool.
Yeah. The mindfulness. I love that. Right. And the other thing is understand what's happening with my attention data bits.
Yeah.
Right. And I
be
think
curious about that, right? Be curious, right?
Yeah. It's not only aware. I love what you just said there. Be more curious about it. What's really happening with my stuff? What's happening with my kids' stuff? Right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the working group and the outcomes of that. Oh man.
This is a huge conversation. So we can have some more conversations in the future, and we're definitely going to be exploring some really interesting technical stuff about the data, and AI algorithm impact, over the next year. So we'd love to come back and talk more about it.
I definitely want to hear more about it. So are there any, can you point anybody to some resources around building up their attention literacy?
Absolutely. Yeah. Probably the best resource and the easiest one available is the Center for Humane Tech. And it's called, I think the website is humanetech.com.
Okay.
And this is the website set up by Tristan Harris. You may have heard of him. He's the guy who produced The Social Dilemma, that documentary about, social media and this whole topic, really. So he produced that documentary and set up a nonprofit, the Center for Humane Tech. And so it's really the intersection of what we're talking about right now. And there's classes for programmers about bias and those assumptions and things like that. So you can, and they're really actively trying to create an ecosystem of individuals, especially in the tech world, who have awareness about this and are, want to actively, support a more healthy online world. And, let's face it, there's the metaverse, there's lots of things coming. I read William Gibson, back in the 80s, and now it seems to be happening. So it's time to kind of up the game of, making sure that people are safe. One of the members of our working group started the Oasis Consortium, which is about online safety and for people in the future. So the internet is a safe place in the future. And then again, I was mentioning the IO Foundation. That's some people who are, advocating for a digital, rights, human rights. And we have many others that we're working with. But I would say the number one resource is humanetech.com.
Humane Tech. All right, cool. And Kaylee just slapped it into the chat box for everybody that's online. So Patty, phenomenal work. I just love it. I love the heart and the good that is going to come out of this movement. And it needs to be a movement, and it needs to be shouted out so that people are aware of it, I think. What do you think?
I really appreciate you having me on to talk about it, because what I want to encourage the listeners to do is, please talk to your family about it, talk to your friends about it, ask, be curious about what this is, because this is our own attention, our own awareness. This is us now. We're the product, right? When you're not paying for something, like we don't pay for Facebook, we don't pay for Google, we don't pay for all these things, then you're the product, right? So what does that mean, right? What does that mean? So just be curious about it. We have a lot of capacity. We have a lot of, ability to make a difference when we have awareness first. We have to have awareness though, before we can do anything. So
beautiful. Thank you, Patty. I want to visit with you again.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Come visit me in Mexico.
Yeah,
we'll do it in person.
Yeah, we'll sit and listen to those pretty birds out there. So beautiful. Thank you again, Patty. I don't know if we had any questions or observations from the panel or the participants.
Yeah, I haven't seen any come through. If anybody has a question, this is a great time to put it into the chat. But I mean, it's a great conversation, Patty. And as the mom of a teenage son and a 5-year-old little girl, like we are walking a tightrope, you know, because you can't, I don't know, at least for my 16-year-old, it's very difficult. You can't just like carte blanche, turn it off or not allow it, especially during times like COVID. That's the only point of connection that these young social beings had, but at the same time, there's so much to unpack there. So I think it's wonderful work that you're doing.
So I think educating kids is going to be one of the most important things because they're digital beings.
Yeah.
They were born and came right into this world. We had, you know.
We had a before.
Yeah, we had punch cards at one point. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Patty's audio froze and video.
Oh.
Yeah, I think she's right. Educating the kids is like, it's so important. And at the same time, we need people like Patty that are going to educate the parents because like I said, we're trying our best too. And this is new for everybody. We're all the guinea pig generation here. So I think Patty and the work that she's doing is phenomenal because we all need a little bit of help with it.
Yeah, and I love that the work is happening through the World Health Organization. That's huge, right? Yeah, and it's awesome.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that because I don't see any questions coming through. And Patty froze, but she froze on a good face.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's like mid sneeze. All right, thank you everybody so much for joining us. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.